So as you can probably guess, I do really like learning things. I like learning a lot about weaving. I like learning about the fiber arts. I like learning from many different people. And so one of the things that I did for myself this past year in 2021 is I signed up for a class to learn double weave from Jennifer Moore. And she is the author of this book, Double Weave. This is the second version of her book. She's done this book, Double Weave book. She's done a double weave class for interweave as well. She teaches this on video. But I found out last year that she also teaches this workshop as a Zoom class, like an online class. And so I wanted to see what it would be like to learn from Jennifer Moore directly. And spoiler alert, it was amazing. So I get asked quite often about the idea of double weave and how to weave double weave and all these kinds of things. When I was teaching weaving back in like 2010 in my old studio on 4th Avenue, one of the first students that I had learning how to weave on a floor loom, one of the first projects she wanted to make was a double width blanket. And so what is double weaving? What is double width? The idea of double weave is to be able to weave more than one layer of cloth at a time. So if you're weaving with, say, like a rigid head loom, you have two shafts basically, and you can weave plain weave and you're weaving one layer. Now, if you weave one layer with two shafts and then you have, say, like a 4-shaft loom, then you can use 2 of your 4 shafts to weave one layer and then the other 2 to weave a second layer. Now, everything about this is like how to create these 2 different sheds and 2 different layers and how to weave them both at the same time. Here's a little sample that I wove off of my loom, and it shows this is what the width was on the loom. And then I wove 2 layers at a time and I had them connected on one side. And so when you open it up, you're basically getting double the width. So this is what it was on the loom, and then I managed to weave 1 layer on top and 1 layer on the bottom, and I connected them on one side in order to produce something that's double width. So that is double weave, where you're weaving a double width of cloth. You can do lots of different things with double weave though, because you don't have to connect them on the one side. You could leave both sides open and just be weaving, like, say, 2 blankets at the same time, completely separate, and you pull them off the loom and then you have 2 completely separate pieces of fabric. The other thing you could do is you could connect them on both sides. So if I connected this fabric on both sides, then I'd have like a tube here, right? So in this tube, I could either stuff it, I could make it wide enough to put a pillow form inside. I could do all sorts of things if I make that into a tube. So at its simplest, this is what double weave is sort of about. It's about weaving 2 layers of cloth at the same time. Now, this happened to be woven on a 4-shaft loom, or actually it was my 8-shaft loom that I pretended was a 4-shaft loom. And so I was using 2 shafts for plain weave on the top and then 2 shafts for plain weave on the bottom layer. Now, if you have an 8-shaft loom, you could start to do other things, like you could weave twill. So you could use all 4 shafts to weave twill on the top and then the other 4 shafts to weave twill on the bottom. And so then you could connect them on one side or connect them on both sides, or however you want to do that, but you could be weaving multiple different kinds of weave structures at the same time in double width. Lots of crazy things. Lots of crazy things are possible. Now, I have had Jennifer Moore's book for a couple of years now, and I've read through it, I've tried to understand, but I didn't actually make any of the projects out of it. And so one of the things that I wanted to experience was actually going through one of the projects. And so the workshop that I signed up for was basically held over 4 sessions. Each session was, I think, 3 or 4 hours long on Zoom. It was quite a significant chunk of time, spending that entire time learning from Jennifer Moore. And so her workshop was really super well organized. I really encourage you to check it out if you're interested in this project at all. So the project that we worked on for the workshop came out of this book, the Double Weave book, and it's called the Double Rainbow Sampler. So you can see this is the project that we worked on. And so what it is there's 6 different colors, rainbow colors. And so you could get them from Lunatic Fringe, you can get them from just 8-2 cotton, you could do all sorts of things. She recommends 5-2 pearl cotton. So what I did was I actually used the Ashford mercerized 5-2 cotton, because It's very handy, very accessible. We have it here at Sweet Georgia. We are playing a lot with it. I'm using this for overshot actually as well. And it's just fun. The colors are really fun. The colors feel really like bright and tropical. So I quite like them. So I use those 6 colors. I picked rainbow colors and I use those for my sampler here. So yeah, if you want to look into this workshop, it's very, very, very well organized. What Jennifer has done is she created a whole bunch of videos before the workshop actually begins. And so you come to the Zoom classes with your loom already dressed and ready to go. And so she sends you videos on how she does the warping, how she threads all the heddles, how she makes sure all the colors are in the right order. Because what you're doing is you're taking the 6 colors and you're holding 4 of the colors together to wind your warp for each section. And then you kind of rotate through these colors so that you're getting all of the different color combinations. I can't even remember how many color combinations you can create through this, but it's like hundreds and hundreds of different color combinations working with just those 6 colors. This was a great way to learn more about double weave and to really just hear about it from somebody in real life, because it's great to read the book. All of the information, or actually most of the information that she taught in the class, can be got from the book, but in the actual workshop, she explains everything. You can ask her questions. She shows more diagrams. She has much more sort of tie-up and treadling patterns than she does even in this book. So there's like even more information in her workshop than there is in the book. But it was really great to be able to hear from her directly and learn from her about how all of this stuff works. And so what I basically learned from her that was the most interesting part was about double weave blocks. So with double weave blocks, you're not just weaving one flat layer and one flat layer and having 2 separate layers. You're weaving layers where some parts of layer 1 are actually on the bottom and some parts of what you think is going to be the bottom layer are actually moved to the top. And they're interspersing in blocks. And so you can get all sorts of design combinations happening, all sorts of different design opportunities happen when you start to work with these kinds of blocks. Just amazing, beautiful, beautiful things. And it's a really fun way of playing with optical mixing at the loom, because you have all of these different colors in your warp, and then you can interlace any color that you want for the weft. And so in this case, I was using blue for one of the layers, and then I'm using its complementary color, the orange, for the other layer, and then seeing how those 2 colors interact. So in some cases, you're going to see some blue on the top layer, and then you might see some orange on the top layer for other blocks in here. So there was a couple of things that I learned from Jennifer's class that I found to be really super helpful, and that was just seeing more videos of watching other people dress their loom, watching other people set up their warping board. How do they wind a warp? How do they dress the loom? I used some of the techniques that I learned from Laura Fry with the intentional weaver, and I dressed my loom using a trapeze because that was incredibly, incredibly helpful. I also used that method where I was holding all of the warp ends in between my fingers and then using that slaying hook or the threading hook to thread the heddles, using the same method that we learned in the intentional weaver. So all of that had made my entire process much faster as well. So I enjoyed that part of it. Seeing all these different colors and in each one of these sections is just really, really so mesmerizing to watch all of these colors interact in the different ways. The other thing that I learned in Jennifer's class was not to be afraid to get under the loom and tie up your loom in different ways, because she has a system for how to tie up your loom in order to isolate the threads that you're going to weave on the top layer and the bottom layer for these double weave blocks. And so if you don't change the tie up, then you don't get to access all of the colors in the way that you want to access them and have them interlace. So you have to occasionally get down under the loom to rearrange the tie-ups and all of that kind of stuff. And so I found that it was important not to be afraid about, just getting everything set up in one way and then never changing it, but to be really flexible and okay with the idea of changing your tie-up, every few inches, even if you wanted to. The concept behind the skeleton tie-up is that you step on more than one treadle at a time in order to raise the combination of shafts that you need in order to create your pattern. Because we don't have that many treadles. I think on this loom we have 10, 12? We have 10 treadles on this loom here. So 8 shafts and 10 treadles. And so I need more than 10 treadles in order to create all the combinations that I need in order to weave this particular cloth. So by breaking up the tie-up into like some treadles do this and some treadles do this, and by combining some of these treadles, like maybe 1 and 4, I can get this kind of shed. If I combine 1 and 5, I get a different shed. So that's the idea behind a skeleton tie-up, is stepping on more than one treadle at a time in order to create the actual combination of shafts that you need to raise. So that was super fun to play with and to experience. And it starts to feel very natural as your feet are kind of like together moving across all these treadles, and you just have to remember all of the different combinations. Now, Jennifer's also taught us a way of making those combinations really easy to remember by writing everything on Post-it notes, and you stick it on the loom, and then you know where you're going and you know what you're doing at all times. She also has different tricks of looking at which color weft thread you're working with, which one is on top, which one is looping around, just all sorts of different ways of reading your weaving and to know where you are at any given time. So you never lose track of where you're at. It's quite amazing. It's kind of like when you learn how to read your knitting, all of a sudden, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing now. I know where I am. And finally, one of the other things that I was really impressed by with this particular class is how practical the projects are. She's designed everything about this project to work out perfectly, like from specifying the reed that you're going to be using, specifying how many ends go into each dent of the reed, specifying this width, everything about this project just is great. And you're not just weaving off a sampler that's just gonna, sit in a box somewhere. You could, or you could hang it on your wall and make it a big, just long sampler that hangs on your wall. But she's also designed ways that you can make this project into things that are very practical. You could make them into pot holders, you could make them into hot pads, you could make them into tablecloths or placemats or whatever you want. But there's a lot of different ways that she's shown that you can adapt this project to make them into practical, useful things. So finally, not necessarily related to the double rainbow side of the project, she's also shown something in this book that is crazy, and it's the idea of weaving 3 layers at a time. So she has a project in here that's actually like a tablecloth, and I'm just going to show you, like, this is, say, like the width of what it would look like on the loom. And then you would weave it kind of like this paper is folded, right? So you would weave the top layer, the bottom layer, and then the inside layer, and then you are able to take it off the loom and open it up like this and have a triple wide cloth. She also has a diagram inside the book of weaving 4 layers at the same time, which is also kind of mind-boggling. I think the one thing that I find the most inspiring out of this entire workshop in this book is that Jennifer Moore, all of her work, all of the design that she's created has for years and years and years all been about double weave. And it uses this weave structure so deeply. It explores all these different aspects of double weave. And I think one of the things that inspires me most, and I'm just in admiration of, is that she found this weave structure that has fascinated her and interested her and inspired her for so long, and that it just fuels all of this passion for exploring it more. I think the reason why I find this so interesting is because I really am on a bit of this quest as well, to find the weave structure that I am so enamored with that I would spend the rest of my life just doing this one particular weave structure. And I don't know what that is yet. So I'm looking, and I'm trying different things, and I want to experience different things to see which one feels like the one that I would do forever and ever and ever. And I know that there's lots of weavers who will weave a variety of things and try all different kinds of techniques, and I very much wanted to do that as well. But I'm trying to do that because I want to find the one that I like the best. So I've already tried, exploring a little bit of the rep weave side of things, exploring weft-faced weaving, like the croque brag mini rug that I made, and just experimenting with different kinds of weaving to find where am I going to be? Where am I going to stay? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to do all my exploration? So seeing Jennifer Moore, and the last session that we had with her on Zoom was her showing us a ton of her portfolio, a ton of the projects that she's created and designed, like triptychs, huge wall art. It's just beautiful, beautiful work that she's created. And it's all in the exploration of double weave. So quite amazing and quite inspiring. So if you have ever been interested in learning about double weave, I really do encourage you to check out Jennifer Moore's book. It's a great book. If you can get into her workshop, I also recommend her online workshop is amazing. It's wonderful. She's very, very generous with her knowledge and very, very, really good at explaining these concepts. So I highly encourage you. And if you are curious about learning how to weave double weave, we are going to be working on double weave content for the rest of this year. So I'm going to be looking at, how to weave double weave on a 4-shaft loom and basically doing this, making a double wide project. We also have Amanda Wood, who also just recently came out with the color and weave class on rigid heddle for the School of SweetGeorgia, and she's going to be preparing content late this year about double weave on a rigid heddle loom. So we're going to do double weave on a rigid heddle, double weave on 4 shafts, and then Amanda Wood, her professional work is actually in this dimensional weaving. And so she's done double weave on multiple shafts, on 8 shafts. And so we're gonna go a little bit further down that path with Amanda as well. There are many, many things that are possible with double weave beyond just making a double wide blanket, but this is a really great place to start so that you get familiar with the idea of how this all works. It's like magic. So that is about it for today. Thank you guys so much for being here to listen to me talk about double weave. I'm really just enamored with this project on the loom. I love it. And I have a few more yards, I think, here to make some kind of pretty project here. So I'm gonna weave this off so that I can free up this loom to do more double weave projects. If you like this video, please do hit the like button. And if you do like content like this, please do hit subscribe. We come here every week to talk about something to do with the fiber arts. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.